So, how do we actually pull apart a novel? How do we use the novel to answer the idea of exploring transitions? It's hard because you've got to let the part tell the whole. You've got to tease out ideas. It's a lot longer than a poem. Do I talk about each page? What quotes work? And how do they work in terms of doing the speech and in terms of doing trial in the HSC? For example, here I am, I've got a digital copy of Tom Brennan here, as you can see. And at the moment, we're dealing with the situation where there's a flashback to Daniel's legal counsel. And that's an interesting part in of itself, but double to that are the parents' reactions, the inner voice, the internalization. And that's how novels work. Novels work with giving us the opportunity to see how people feel about things through narration, as opposed to, say, a play where you get it through monologues or soliloquy. A poem, you get it through the idea of imagery or image-laden language. A film, it's shown to us, it's not told to us, but in a novel, you tease it out of the language of the narrator. And the narrator here, of course, is Tom. And Tom is the one who's giving us the insights here. So, for instance, have a look. We've got this paragraph here. I watched my parents link their fingers together on the table. One of the worst things was watching them, seeing the hurt and shame and fear in their faces, the way they'd aged in 2 weeks, the way they'd hardly left the house. One of them was always at home with Daniel, like he was a little child, unable to be left alone. It's paragraphs like that that you really need to tease out of this work to get a full sense of where you're going and how you're going. I'm just going to move myself to a nicer spot. There we are there. So I'm not in, I don't have the words behind me. So you look at just a couple of the brief little moments here. Firstly, of course, you've got that first person, I watched my parents. And instantly we're dealing with the idea that, yes, the narrator, the person telling us the story, can only have the sensibilities of a 17-year-old male and therefore can only have that level and depth of insight. And we have to tease the rest out of what's going on behind the phrasing. I watched my parents link their fingers together on the table. One of the worst things was watching them. One of the worst things. So here we have, some might say it's hyperbolic language, but it isn't. He's actually stating a truth, and he's talking about the transition of the parents in this situation. So if you want to argue well for your assessment and ask you to deal with character, you have to deal with all of the characters and how the parents are actually coping with this issue. Hurt and shame and fear. 3 emotional points. Hurt, shame, fear. Now, a good idea would be to take those 3 words and write them down. And I'd do that right now. Hurt, shame, fear. Pause me, write them down. So, further on in the chapter, we get to actually see where at least the fear might have been playing out, and that is what's going to occur in terms of Daniel's sentencing. And you can see the way in which the magistrate actually posits some of the ideas, but it's interesting that we get Tom's perspective of it. The magistrate cracked on. You get this teenagery look at it. Still, one might say, an apologist for his brother, for his behaviour and his actions. Those of us on the other side, those of us reading this, possibly are going, well, he kind of deserves to be treated this way. He has caused enormous pain and enormous difficulty. I knew Nicole and Luke's families were here. I'd seen them as we walked in. Held my breath as I thought Dad was going to shake Luke's father's hand. He didn't know. He just kept walking, his arms around Mum's shoulders. You can see that the devastation in the community has become palpable, felt, and something very real, something very, very exacting in their world. So those elements of fear are to do with how both Daniel's going to be treated, but how they are going to be seen in the town from this point on, and how they're going to cope and move on from this, knowing full well that they're going to be held accountable for their child's actions, despite the fact that their child is entirely to blame. The parent is the person solely, amongst other things, really, in society responsible for that child's behaviour. But there's us, teachers, there's our societal expectations, and in this country there's our issue with alcohol, there's our issue with drink driving, there's our youth alcohol problem, as you're all aware. These things play into it, but in the end the parents are blamed. He's pleading guilty, as we know, and there was a scream. Not loud, more shocked, I think. I kept my eyes on my knees. It was safe that way. There was too much going on behind. The interesting thing is, because we get Tom's perspective, we don't get to see or hear who that scream comes from. If it's from Daniel's mother, if it's from mum, if it's from one of the families of the affected people, if it's from someone in the town. The town has already condemned this person. And that's another transitionary moment. The family are now on the outer. When you're on the outer, things change completely for them. We then come back after the magistrate has delivered his sentencing, or as he said, you'll be sentenced in 70 days. We come back to reality, and we come back to the now. Well, it was always reality, but we come back to the now. And the undercurrent, the undertone that's going on here, which is, of course, the selection of the rugby team. And it's selected here, and I'll move myself here. You see Tom's become and been made halfback, which, of course, is something that was to be expected. But he says that there it was, my year mapped out before me. Decisions have been made for him in this situation. And then he goes back again to his relationship with his brother. And so we understand that he's trying to actually get us as a reader to come to terms with the fact that we shouldn't just immediately charge guilt on someone and say, this person's horrible, this person's evil, this person's bad, because they've done this bad thing, and therefore everything they do is evil and bad. He's trying to remind us that there's a human being there, and that human being's made a dreadful error. So we hear about his relationship with his brother through the halfback 5/8 combination, which, of course, as we know, in rugby and rugby league is a key to the game. And we get these famous combinations here: Farr, Jones and Ella, Larkham and Gregan, and, of course, Matthew and Andrew Johns in the rugby league world. Two great halfback 5/8 combinations, Brett Kenny, Peter Sterling, that kind of thing. Basically, the kind of thing that wins the game or sets a team apart quite often, more often than not. And it's a very, very pleasant read, this section. You can see this really wonderful relationship between the two brothers. Dad and Daniel got me practicing my passes. They'd line them up. It goes on with all the hard work paid off. Year 10, I was picked to play halfback. We were men on a mission, almost men. Now, that's an interesting line. David was shaving, and if I spotted something that vaguely looked like a whisker, we kept practicing each arvo. Our gurus were the back page of Billy Weekly ran a photo of me throwing a dive pass to Daniel. It's looking great. These boys are actually coming of age beautifully, and everything is in control. Now, this is the pre-life for Daniel and for Tom and for the family. And so you can see actually here that we have the family are in the centre of the town's expectations, the legend of the Brennan brothers. So the point is that they've got further to fall. Okay, they're not just nobodies, they're like celebrities. Now, when we look at, say, someone like the golfer, Tiger Woods here, one writer's plea to Tiger: don't try to play golf anymore. We know his story is one of a transitionary idea. It's actually something you can look at how textually the media has dealt with someone like Tiger Woods. Now, I've used Tiger Woods with Year 11 because they're dealing with the racial issue in Othello. But here we can look at it in the terms of hero to zero kind of ideas. Sorry for the cliche there, it's a bit nasty, but we get this every time I think about Tiger Woods telling a police officer he cannot bend over and tie his shoes. There's a voice that simply, I can't shake. It's something I never thought of, much less, I don't want this man to try to play golf anymore. This is a person who's let a whole society down. The expectation was huge. He set himself apart, not only because he was the greatest golfer who was around at the time. He belongs to a race of people who traditionally aren't good at these kinds of things, a very white man sport, particularly in the US. And so for that reason, the expectation is doubly huge. It's massive. And his fall from grace is bigger than, say, anyone who, without the celebrity, falling down, busted drunk driving or getting busted in an infidelity situation. It's an interesting sort of idea. And so for the Brennans, you've got the same problem. The back page of the Billy Weekly ran a photo of me throwing the legend of the Brennan brothers. So the town's going through a transition as much as the boys are. These were the local heroes, and it was the star of the show that let the town down. Okay, and that's really where we're going. It was a while after the accident before we could get back to school. Kylie and I had endless counselling sessions, but nothing can prepare you. It was hard, really hard, but not for the reasons I thought it would be. The teachers and most of the kids were okay. Matt and Snorter acted like we were Siamese triplets. It was hard because everything was a reminder of what life had been like just weeks before. There were so many times when I just couldn't believe that this had happened to me, to my family. This sort of thing happened to other people, not the Brennans. Again, with that collective noun of who they are as a family. And so it is about that sort of exploring that transitionary idea of how you see yourself in the town and how the town sees you and where the town has now placed you. It's an interesting fall from grace because it's so big and it's so huge. And that's really the crux of the novel. That's where the novel works. And we come down, say, here. Gran reckons she heard someone at the front door. It goes on. Someone must have slipped this under the door. Who's it for? It says, the Brennans. Dad started to open. He unfolded 2 sheets of thin paper, the colour draining from his face. It's from the Coles family. Dad started reading it himself. We watched him, waited for him. Read it. Yeah, read it. And it goes on. To the Brennan family, we thank you for Daniel's letter and words of remorse. I can't say. We understand the court likes a letter of remorse that is looked upon favourably. We also understand from our solicitors that letter or no letter, it is most likely Daniel will be sent to prison. This is our letter of remorse to tell you, even if they locked you up for the term of your natural life, Daniel, it wouldn't bring Nicole back, and that's what we're sorry for. And so this letter is in terms very central to the novel in that way. Words for you, Daniel. You're a man, a handsome man, a sporting man, a man who likes to enjoy life. But remember, Daniel, because your life is more than just a one-man show, everything we do in this life affects others. Did you think of that night you got behind the wheel? We leave these words with all of you, the words of a respected citizen of this town. Interesting there. Words that seem to represent what many of us feel. Daniel Brennan was an accident waiting to happen. What a shame his accident happened to others. Our family will be there in court, yet no sentence will be long enough. Please send our thoughts to Kath and Finn. Our prayers are with them in this difficult time. And then that's the thing. And like I said, that was a low point. Now, it's not a low act because the family have every right to be angry and upset. But it points out the issue at hand here, the crux of the issue of why the whole family is brought to bear on Daniel's sin. And that is because of his position in the town, his authority in the town, and what he got away with because he was central to that idea of being a sporting hero. It's another central theme in the Australian psyche and indeed other societies. Anyway, that's a little bit of what you could possibly think about when you're doing a whole novel. There's a couple of 100 pages to deal with, but look for 3 or 4 key moments in there. Look for thematic words that you can cling on to. You can say, okay, what's fear? These kinds of moments in each character. Where do they come back and represent and re-represent? And then how is the novelist shaping meaning through its style and its mode? And we understand that it's a 17-year-old boy's voice. So any other voice is either an attack on him, his family, or his sensibilities. Good luck. I'll do a few more of these if I can. And I hope you're enjoying your break. Look to week 3, where I'll start to upload a few more things, particularly in terms of examples and essays and so forth. It was a bit difficult at the moment, but I'll get back into the school area soon. Thank you.